Hello, this is Kwame Tanner, and welcome to my presentation on how to start an assisted living facility. It's a detailed step-by-step guide on starting an assisted living facility. It can be applied all throughout the United States of America. I've actually owned 5 assisted living facilities myself, and I've actually consulted with others to help them start assisted living facilities, 10 other facilities actually. And I've been in this industry for 10 years. Learned everything. Some things I've learned the hard way. Um, Looking to give you any advice I can on this presentation to help you out so you don't make some of the same mistakes that I've made and, prosper in the industry. It's a very good industry to be in. It's booming and it's not hard to start, but it's only hard if you don't know the proper steps. So, with that being said, let's get started. Now, I know the first thing people ask is how much do we get paid? How much do the clients pay you? So I decided on start off with this. I don't know what state you are in, but my facilities were in Maryland, and you know, I will say this survey from Genworth has been pretty spot on whenever I did market research. So I'm just sharing this with you. The average assisted living cost in the United States, the average resident pays $37.50. So that's $3,750. I've had some clients pay more than that. I've had some clients pay less. And it all depends on the level of care. So the level of care is, you in Maryland, it's level one, two, or three. Level one is like you or me. You can walk, you can take care of yourself, you can do most things for yourself. You just may need to be in a structured setting. Level two is you may need help with bathing. You may can take your medication on your own, but you may need reminders. You just may need help getting in and out of the shower, moderate care. Level three is total care, where they can't take their medication on their own, they need medication management, they can't shower, you may have to bathe them. Sometimes it's amputees, level threes. Sometimes it's stroke victims. So it just all depends on level of care as to how much you charge. Uh, So I've had level twos pay $3,000 or more per month. It just depends on the level of care in the area, you know, whatever the market bears. Okay, so first thing you do when starting a assisted living facility is you go get an LLC and you put the business in the LLC. Just for several reasons, but when you're working with a frail population like seniors, you do have accidents. You have sometimes the clients may slip and fall. Sometimes they you may have an employee that will do something wrong. You don't want the potential for something to fall back on your personal assets. So you want to protect your assets, and then other benefits is tax pass through taxation. You don't have to pay as much as a corporation, but you have a little more tax breaks than the average home, the average person who doesn't have an LLC. You have heightened credibility, which means when you actually have a physical business name and you present it professionally, it just looks a lot better. Um, it's just flexibility with the management structure. You can actually have things structured on your LLC documents, and everything will be above board. It's very important that you should create an LLC when starting an assisted living facility. Now, before you actually even find a location, what I suggest is you take the necessary classes to manage an assisted living facility. Usually it takes a few weeks to get certified. It's like in Maryland, it's an 80-hour manager's course. It lets you know everything you need to know about managing an assisted living facility. And that way, you at least know what you're getting yourself into. Even if you're an investor and you don't plan on running your own assisted living facility, I still would suggest you take these courses just so you can know what to expect from your manager. And if something happened to them, you can step in on a short-term basis and fill in. So, I mean, you'll take classes like philosophy of assisted living, aging process and impact, assessment and level of care, which is assessment and level of care is pretty much determining if your resident is a level 1, 2, or 3. That's what I talked about in the previous slide. Infection control, uh, admission and discharge criteria. There is a certain protocol you have to follow for each resident that enters a facility as well as when they leave your facility. You have to have all that documented and have to keep it on file for 5 years. Patient health and safety. So you have to know things about pressure sores, substance abuse residents, and their staffing patterns. So you have to have a staffing pattern that revolves around each patient. Some patients may require 2 people on staff at once. If you have a 350-pound client that's a level 3, you can't have one person working in your facility to actually care for that one person, because what if they need to get out of bed? What if they need to use the restroom? You can't expect one 130-pound girl, even with a Hoyer lift, to get this person out of bed. So you have to make your staffing plans according to the residents you actually have in your facility. Now, if you're an investor and you don't want to be bothered with it, you hire a manager. So, before you even find your facility, you have to hire a manager and say, hey, I'm going to build an assisted living facility. I have an investment property that I want to turn into an assisted living facility. I want you to be my manager. Now, when I first started, I actually took the classes and I managed myself. Then as I built my third, fourth, and fifth facilities, I stepped away and I started hiring managers. But by then, I knew everything I needed to know about managing a facility. So if you were a new manager coming in, I knew everything I needed to expect from you. I knew how to inspect my own books. I knew, if something wasn't right. So, if you're an investor and you don't want to take it, that's fine. You just hire someone, but I would make sure you check their references and you make sure they have all their certificates are up to date. Now, the next thing I would do is create your facility acquisition budget. Now, this will take you through your licensing process. This is how much money you should expect to have in savings, or how much you should have put away for this project. Um, you have whatever, if you have a mortgage or a rent, I would make sure you have at least 10 months, about 10 months budgeted away to have a vacant property, because the process can take anywhere between 6 and 10 months. In my experience, it just depends on the time of year, how many licenses they have in front of you, how long the fire department can take to come out and inspect your property. It's just, I would say between 6 and 10 months. I would have to have gas and electric, the average gas and electric, put away for that, budget it. Uh, Gas and electric shouldn't be a huge expense, because the property is going to be sitting vacant for a little while, so you can only turn the gas and electric on when you're there or when you're doing work. So it shouldn't be that much. You want to have the grounds kept well. Believe it or not, I would maybe put a sign, assisted living facility coming soon. That way people in your neighborhood start to know, like, oh, this place is going to be an assisted living facility. They're working on it. Okay, great. You want to make sure the grounds look really nice, because you're going to get most of your clients from your area, because there's going to be clients that want to stay in that area. Maybe some clients have aged in place in that area and they can't go back home, but they still have friends and family there. So you just want to always, keep the property presentable, even through the licensing process. And you want to have a furniture budget. Depending on how many bids you have, you want to budget. Say if you have an 8-bid facility, you want to have a budget for 8 bids. You want to have budget for how many sitting areas, a living room, dining room. So you need to at least go online and go visit some stores and see how much this stuff is going to cost. You want pictures on the wall, and you want these people to come in and when they're doing tours to say, "Oh wow, this place may be new, but it feels like home already. It feels like a proper home. My mother's going to be happy here." You know, um, you want to make sure you have stuff budgeted away for your first food when they come. So I would just make sure you have the when it comes time after you are in the end stages of your licensing process, I would put away a certain amount of money for food budget because you're going to have clients that come in, they're going to have to eat. So it's going to be things like that. Those are the main key things that I can think of, but it's just little things here and there that you should budget um, for your facility. And we're going to talk about facility amenities coming forward. And to kind of elaborate on the acquisition budget, you should have budgeted away for your initial staff. So if you're an investor and you don't plan on working there yourself, when you first open your doors, you may have a waiting list of clients that come. Some people are great marketers, and it's easier when you market ahead of time. But you know, you may have a if you have an 8-bed facility, you may have three clients ready to move in, but you still have to have your initial staff budgeted, which means you have to have hired staff. Um, if you don't plan on working there yourself, even if you do and you want to break, you have to have that person on staff and they have to be paid. So once you open your doors, you have to have that the staff budgeted away. So, and it makes it easier because when you have clients that actually move in when you open your doors, what I would do, I charge an initial entry fee, which is different than a deposit. So the entry fee was an amount they had to pay to move into the facility, and that covered the expense for the delegating nurse. The delegating nurse is a RN that you have on staff, not necessarily on staff, but you contract her, and she has to give every patient that comes into your facility an assessment. So usually my delegating nurse charged $100 for every assessment she gave. So I would charge a $1,500 entry fee, and that would cover the delegating nurse. If they needed anything special, I would take it out of that. And that can, when you first open your doors, those entry fees can help put towards your staff budget and your delegating nurse, or if they have any special diets, you go out and get the special foods that they may need for their special diets. And the next thing is the licensing fees. You should definitely budget your licensing fees as well. Now, all your licensing fees are right on the application. We're going to go over the application coming forward, but uh, it's definitely should budget away your licensing fees. So now we're looking at finding a location. So if you're an investor, you may have a house already that you are looking into turning into an assisted living facility, or if you're not an investor, you may have a house that you live in. I've helped clients turn their own personal homes into assisted living facilities where they just have a few beds there to, make an extra 6, 7 grand a month, and they stay there. You know, but pictured here is my third assisted living facility. I actually built this facility. It looks like a house on the outside, but it was a home there that actually burned down. It was cleared away. And I built this facility to look like a house on the outside, but it actually was an assisted living facility on the inside. It was 16 beds. Uh, it had some shared rooms and some private rooms. My first facility, my very first one, I actually rented. I found a big rancher, and I thought to myself, like, I want to get into assisted living. I found this rancher. It was for rent. I rented it for 3 years, And I wanted to make sure when you're looking to rent or buy a facility, you need to make sure that it has the most bedrooms, obviously, because your bedrooms is where you're going to make your money. You want to have the most common use area, and common space is it's pretty much a living room, a dining room, a sitting room, any place they can congregate outside of their bedroom is considered common use space. You want to have the most bathrooms because your license is going to determine that the formula they're going to use to determine how many beds you can have in your facility is how many bedrooms times the amount of, with the amount of square footage, the appropriate square footage of the common use space, and the most bathrooms, because they're not going to give you 10 clients with one bathroom. They're not going to give you a license for that. So you need to have at least one bathroom, one full bathroom for each 4 residents. So, and that's in the states I've gotten licensed in. But most states are identical in these regulations. So you the bedroom has to be a minimum square footage to have to be shared. So it has to be at least 180 square feet to be to be shared. So you make your most money off a room if you can obviously share it. If you can only have one client paying 3 grand per month, that's great, but why not have 2 clients paying 3 grand a month in this room? So, you double your money from the room. So when you're looking for a location, just keep in mind, you know, these certain things. But if you're an investor, or if you buy a facility or you buy a home, you can customize it. So you may just want to look for potential, like, oh, this house has great potential. I can add a new bathroom, or I can add 2 more bedrooms in here some kind of way. So you just have to make sure that it has the actual parameters to actually have the amount of client that you want. You may only want 4 residents. Some people may want 16 residents. It's just totally up to you. So what we're going to talk about now is if you decide on leasing a facility. Uh, I did that with my first facility. It worked out great for me. I leased it for 2 years. I saved up enough money to build my next one, and the next one, and the next one, and it was great that I leased it because I didn't even know if I wanted to even do assisted living facility full time. I thought it was a great business, but I didn't know what to expect once I got into the industry. And if I didn't like it, I was able to walk away from my lease when the lease was up and close down, or I can keep moving. What I actually did was waited for my lease to be up. Um, then I moved in all the clients to a new facility that I actually built with the savings that I made leasing this facility. So what you can do uh, when you lease a facility is you can negotiate a grace period for your lease. So that's what I did. I went to the owner, and it was a big home, and I said, hey, I want to do a assisted living facility. It's going to be 6 months from me before I can get a license. If I do a 3-year lease, can you, at this rate, maybe offer them a few $100s more? Can you give me 6 months free and give me a grace period to actually do the things I need to do to the home to get it ready for assisted living? And it was okay. He said, fine. We had it all written out, and then that's what I did. You can do a lease to own contract. I've actually helped one of my clients do a lease to own where she leased the property. We did it. We negotiated the grace period for the lease. She she had her 6 months grace period, but at the contract we agreed on a price for her, and after her lease was up, or any time she was able to buy the owner out and at a set amount or at market rate, whichever was lower. So, and then she did that. She actually bought the property that she was leasing. So it worked out perfect. And you can create an investor out of your landlord, and that's what she also did. We actually negotiated with her landlord, and we said, hey, we need the property had been sitting for a year, and the guy wasn't able to rent it, so we had some leverage. So we're willing to give him a 3-year lease, and we say, hey, can you go in and put some handicap rails and get us a chairlift going up the stairs. It had stairs. And the guy was like, all right, cool. He actually did the work that she needed to have done for assisted living for $250 more a month and a 3-year lease. So you'd be surprised what you can get out of a lease if you simply ask for it, especially if the person has been sitting on the property for a long time. Next, we're going to talk about purchasing a location for your assisted living facility. Uh, just like you have your benefits of leasing, you have for sure benefits of owning. I mean, you have the pride of ownership for one. That's not even listed on here. Then you have the home increases in value. You get that equity in the home, and the landlord doesn't get the equity. You get the equity. You can sell it. If you wanted to sell your business, I sold my assisted living facility, I sold the property and the business. You get 2 checks instead of one for the property, one for the business. It's just lower cost as well when you owe. The mortgage is typically going to be lower than the rent, a lot lower actually, especially if you're working with an investor. That if you're leasing from an investor that has kind of helped you and they know you're doing assisted living, a mortgage may be a lot lower. I mean, and you can actually look, it's different mortgage calculators that you can look and say, okay, if I buy a property versus leasing. So, but typically in my experience, you have lower costs in purchasing your property. You have taxes. You have the tax breaks of owning a property, and you have the tax deductions of when you have a business in that property. So those are the main things that I can see being a plus when you own your assisted living facility. Now, when looking for a facility, you have to keep in mind the facility amenities. Now, we talked about this in a previous slides, but you by law in most states you need a dining space for each resident to eat at the same time, which means you can't have 5 people eating dinner with 5 people waiting to eat dinner behind them. You have to be able to have seating for every client at once because the state's going to look at it like, well, it's not fair that one person has to wait to eat behind another person. You have to have a lockbox for each resident to keep their personal belongings. So I went to Target and got these lockboxes that they put in their bedside nightstands. It worked well. I screwed it in the bottom of the nightstand. They had their little key. They can keep their wallet and their change and whatever personal belongings they wanted. Some clients had their discharge forms from the military. They would keep there, their mail, and you have to also have a nightstand for each resident: a bed, a nightstand, a table side lamp. Um, that's it for the bedrooms. You also have to have adequate bedding and toiletry. So they're going to come when they do the inspection. They're going to say, okay, let's see. Okay, you have your bed made. Do you have a spare sheet in case this person has an accident? They want to make sure you have, adequate bedding and toiletries. What a few things I've learned over the years that they won't look for, but that I wouldn't do. Um, you have to keep your property as senior friendly as possible. I mean, you are running an assisted living facility, so I would for sure avoid area rugs. My first incident I've ever had was due to an area rug. I had a lady, she had a walker, and it was like one of my first clients, and we had dinner time, and she was walking to get dinner, and she tripped over the area rug and fell, and almost had a heart attack. So from then on, I took all the area rugs up and never really had that problem. I would avoid high tables because you have some clients that have wheelchairs and they need to get around and they're not going to be able to sit at the high table. Um, and if you have stairs, which is fine, I would just have a chair lift. Even if your clients can do stairs well, they're going to have good days and they're going to have bad days. They're elderly, so some days they may be sore and they don't want to negotiate 11 stairs to get upstairs. So, you can find chairlifts online. You can find used ones. They're on Craigslist, they're on eBay. You can find chairlifts at a good rate, and they're pretty easy to install. You can get a handyman to install them. I actually would install my own. But I would definitely, even if you had stairs and you plan on getting clients that can do stairs, I would for sure get a stair lift because that's going to be a good selling option. Because when you have families that come to your facility, they're gonna first thing they're gonna see is those stairs. And like, oh, my mother, she's not gonna want to do those stairs every day. That's why she's moving out of the house that she's in now. So, definitely do that. One facility, I had an elevator built. I had an elevator built, but some that might not be in everyone's budget, but you'll get there in your third and fourth facility. Um, a few other things is I started converting when I started to make a little more money. I started converting some of the bathrooms into easy access showers where they can just step over the little ledge and get into the shower. And then I had one those bathing tubs where the door would open and they would be able to sit in the bathing tub. So those are things you get later down the line, or if you can afford them right away, perfect. But I couldn't do it until like my third or fourth facility, which is fine. And those are things you add later down the line. Um, and that's it for this one. So next we'll talk about zoning your assisted living facility. Once you find your location and you picked it out and you're ready to go, you call the zoning department and you schedule a consultation. You go and you talk to the person and you say, hey, I have this house. This is the address. I want to do assisted living facility. I want to have a license. I want to have a license for 8 beds, and it's not a hard step. They'll give you paperwork, and it'll say, okay, well, you have this many rooms. You're gonna have this many rooms shared. You're gonna run this as an assisted living, a licensed assisted living facility, and they'll have you fill it out. Usually, you have to submit some sort of handwritten drawings, and they'll have an approval for you within a week. I'd say it never taken me longer than a week to do zoning. Then you submit that approval with your actual application for licensing. This is one of the steps you have to have before you submit your application, along with the fire department. So you have to have the fire department actually come to the facility. The fire department, they're going to look for smoke detectors, CO2 detectors, any fire hazards that the home may be, and they may say, hey, you have to change this or put a smoke detector here, or you may need a wheelchair ramp or whatever. Usually they won't require you to do much, but have the smoke detectors in place, and you have to have fire extinguishers on each level, and you have to have an exit plan. So you have to have those same handwritten drawings that you submitted for zoning. You have to have one posted on each level with the exits marked, and that's what the fire department's going to look for. And that's actually a part of the zoning process. Now we're going to actually go over the actual assisted living application. So, in my experience, most states are the same or very similar. It may just be some slight variations depending on state regulations, but mostly they have 80%, 90% of the same information they require. A few tips: I would not submit an incomplete application. They're just going to return it, and it may annoy some of them because now the next time you send it in, they're definitely going to look at it with a fine tooth comb. Secondly, I would have someone else review the application before I send it in. You could either consult with someone, I do consulting, to look it over, or if you know of someone else that owns an assisted living facility, you can, ask for a few hours of their time to bring your application and look at, they can look at what you've done. Be sure to have copies of all your documents. I've had state officials actually lose my license, and I had to do the whole packet over again. So just have a duplicate packet just in case you need it. Um, the application is going to have the fee. So, they're going to have all the fees. So this one has, you know, for $150 is for 5 to 15 beds. That's going to be your application fee, and so on and so forth. And they're going to require you to have this different application settings. So this one is the general information, which is your LLC, copies of your LLC, the fees, the ownership information is your LLC. You need a background check. So anyone actually looking to own an assisted living facility, they're going to have you do a background check if you own or manage, and they're going to review that background check. They don't want you to have any violent offenses against seniors or any abuse complaints. So they definitely want you to have a background check. So I would actually do the background check kind of early on in the process, because depending on your state, that can take a few weeks to actually get back to you. So you don't want to wait to the last minute to do your background check. That's just going to add time onto your licensing process. You need to have a workers' compensation form, and that's really easy to get. It sounds difficult, but it takes a day. You go to your local workers' comp office, and you say, I'm going to have a assisted living facility. I'm going to A, have no employees, or B, have employees. And if you have employees, you just have to say what you plan on, what you plan on paying them, or the different structure of your workers' compensation. And they do have consultants that do that for you as well. And it just gives you required documents for the initial application. So what I said before, you're going to need that hand-drawn sketch of the site. They tell you the dimensions, 8 by 10 paper, and they make it easy. You don't even have to have blueprints. On some, I did hand-drawn sketches in the beginning, but the later ones that I actually built, I just submitted the blueprints, because those are a lot better than my chicken scratch handwriting. You need a uniform disclosure statement. We're going to actually go over a uniform disclosure statement in a second. We have they want you to have a 4-week menu cycle, which means you have to say what you're going to feed them, which days for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And they want to see a 4-week menu cycle. And I actually have a copy of one of those as well. I can show you on the next slide. And just like we just discussed, this is example of one of my facilities I actually built. This was my 4th facility. This one had mostly private rooms and an elevator, but I submitted a copy of the blueprints because this one was a total rehab. This was an end of group home that I added a full-story addition and just made this into a massive assisted living facility. I submitted the blueprints with this, but you have to have these on each floor with the exits marked. You can even do hand drawing, like we just talked about. So it just doesn't matter. Don't be intimidated. They know you aren't an architect or or a professional artist. So just do the best you can and draw it as best you can. And you have to actually put the dimensions. Or you can hire someone to do it. If you have a handyman or someone good with a ruler or a good sketch person, you can have someone come out and do your drawings for you. So it's no big deal. And you also have like certain programs that you get from Home Depot that you can plug in the dimensions and build drawings of your location. So you can do that as well. So we previously talked about uniform disclosure statements. You have to actually submit this with your license. This is just one of the pages from the uniform disclosure statement. Pretty much the purpose of a uniform disclosure statement is to empower the consumer by describing the assisted living program policies and procedures. So in a uniform manner. So everything that you plan on offering in your facility, you have to document in this uniform disclosure statement. So if you plan on offering 3 meals a day, and you have to submit that there. If you plan on offering parade meals, is when like you have to when they have their meals have to be blended because they can't eat solid food. You have to say, yes, we're going to offer this, but at an extra price. You have to be very detailed in what you're going to offer clients, because And it's actually good for your liability, because if you have a client that moves in and they say, well, this person said they were going to, this facility said they were going to do this, and you say, no, you signed a copy of the uniform disclosure statement and it clearly says this is what we're going to do, and this is what the extra cost is if we take you to a doctor's appointment. Or, I've had so many clients tell me, you have to take me to the doctors. And I said, well, I never agreed to take you to the doctor. We offer that as a service. We take you to doctor's appointments, outside the facility, but that's at an extra cost. And the families, you know, they think that, you're supposed to take the family members to all their doctor's appointments, which is a huge expense, because now you have to hire a driver or someone to take them to the doctor's appointment, someone to sit with them. But you can offer it, but I would offer that at a higher rate than, it'll be an add-on, and that will go on your uniform disclosure statement. So that's pretty much the purpose of a uniform disclosure statement. It's for your protection and the client's protection, and it clearly outlines all your services to a very specific detail. Now, we also discussed a 4-week menu, and you also have to submit this with your application. And be sure that when they actually come to your facility, that you have the food to actually accommodate this menu, because they're going to look, the inspector's going to look when they do your final inspection. They're going to say, okay, let's see your menu. And they're going to look in your fridge, and your fridge has to have a thermostat that matches the actual temperature, and they're going to check that. They're going to check the temperature of your water in your facility. But you have to have the food that actually matches your menu. So, when you do your initial shopping, make sure you take that menu and you have all the ingredients to make it. They're not going to check everything, but they may, if you have an inspector that, you're a new facility, so they want to make sure that you know what you're doing. So they're going to take extra time with you. It's going to be your initial renewal inspections, where that same person may come in and be like, oh, hey, how are you? Let me just check a few things and I'm out. You know, but your initial assessment is when they're going to be mostly looking at everything. So, because they don't want to have to come back a year later and your facility's in shambles. So, just be mindful that if you say you're going to have, barbecue beef and barbecue beef sandwiches, you better have the beef and the barbecue to match the menu. So, because they just might check when they do your initial inspection. Now we're back to looking at the application. And this is the things they're going to be looking for. It's everything spelled out. They make it very easy for you. So this one says, they're going to want a copy and a verification showing that the building is owned or leased by you or controlled by you. They're going to want to see a copy of your program approved inspection reports. The fire inspection we talked about, they want to see that. You have to submit that. They want to see a copy of the zoning approval. We talked about that. They're going to want to see, does your program have workers? And they want to see the workman's compensation and insurance. They're going to want to see that. We talked about that. If they have different set of rules, if your facility is 17 bids or over. So if your facility is 17 bids or over, they want a copy of your program's food and safety permit. So if you're serving more than 17 people, that's another level. So you're going to have a separate stove so in my facility that was bigger than 17 beds, we had to have a separate gas line going to the stove. That way, it had to be connected to the fire system, because if it was a fire, the gas line had to shut off to the stove. It was just a lot more to do when you're talking about over 17 beds, which is why I stuck around 16 beds. Um, if you different counties have different regulations, which is what I said. Some counties may be a little different than others. So if your program is located in Howard County, submit the current copy of the Howard County rental license. I never had one in Howard County, but different counties are different. This one has a Montgomery County code. Different codes for different counties. Uh, Also, they have the same applications for your renewal. So you have to follow these steps even if you're renewing or submitting a new license. So it's just best to keep all this stuff on file So when you're ready to renew, you just send all the updated copies in. They're going to come out and do another inspection. But by then, you've already been in business 2 years and you haven't had any complaints or anything. And they're going to come out and they're going to say, oh, see, you've been doing a great job. Okay, great. Let's check out a few things, check out a few rooms, see if you have your lock boxes, see if your water temperature's great, see if you have enough food. And, they're going to be on their way, you know. So just keep in mind when you do these applications, it's just good to keep even a blank one around so you know what to always have in place, even if they do a pop-up inspection. So continuing on with reviewing the application, they're also going to be looking for certain other documents that we've talked about. One is the assisted living manager staff records, which must contain written evidence that all managers met the experience, age, and health requirements, which means that they're going to look for, if you're going to be the manager, they want to see your background check. They're going to want to see that you took all the classes. They want to see those classes aren't expired. They want you to have your PPD shots that make sure you don't have any communicable disease that you can pass on to the clients. Um, they're also going to want to see, you're going to have an alternate assisted living manager. So this person, if they're your alternate, they don't actually have to work there. So say if you have a small assisted living facility, if you only have a few beds and you don't need multiple people working and you don't need multiple managers, you just have someone else on retainer that could be an assisted living manager. They have all the same certificates, but they don't work there, and they just fill in as needed. So you just have a contract with them. You get copies of all their certifications, and you have them on call in case you go on vacation. If you have an emergency, you have to leave suddenly, you have someone else that can cover for you as the manager of your facility. They also want documentation of any criminal background check. We already talked about that. They want to see a delegating nurse staff record. So you have to hire a delegating nurse, which is that's a contractor. So she's going to be a contractor. He or she's going to be a contractor, and they have to do all the assessments for each client that comes into your facility. So they're going to be the ones that do the initial assessments. You're going to go in and meet the person. If you have a client, you go to the nursing home and the hospital and you meet them. And you say, hey, I have an assisted living facility. You talk to them and they do a tour, or their family member do a tour. They decide to actually move into your facility. Once they decide that, you call your delegating nurse and you say, hey, I have this person that wants to move into my facility. I need you to actually do an assessment. They're going to go in, they have assessment tools and forms they have to fill out. They're going to give them a thorough assessment. They're going to see if they have any bed sores. They're going to see, look at all their medications, and they're going to write the care plan for you and your staff to follow to care for this person. This is very important. You cannot have anyone move into your assisted living facility without the delegating nurse giving them an assessment first, because that's a huge liability. You don't know how you're even going to take care of this person without that delegating nurse. And usually delegating nurses initial assessments, they're not expensive. They're 100. I paid my delegating nurse $100, and it's well worth it. They're also going to look for a quality assurance plan. It's just a plan that you write up that will have that's going to have all your facility rules and regulations, like no smoking in the facility. Here's your dedicated smoking area. If you have actual visiting hours, your visiting hours are going to be in this plan. Um, I have actual copies of these that I'm going to attach with this, and you can actually review all of my old forms from my companies that were already approved. So I'll have attachments of most of these documents attached to this presentation. Also, you're going to have to see the resident agreement. I have a copy of the resident agreement that I'll attach as well, which is the lease that you have to have with these client. So it's just a lease, just like someone's leasing a property from you. You have to have, that documented. You have to keep that in that file. I have that copy of that as well. And the lease will have things like, how much they're going to pay, obviously, their level of care, the move-in date. It's going to have a copy of your residence rights, and your facility rules are going to be actually attached to this. So usually when they ask for a copy of your residence rights and your policies, all that's going to be attached to your actual resident agreement. So you just submit that and you say see resident agreement and they know it. So, and you have your residence rights and agreements also posted in your facility. Also, they're going to look for your program policy and procedures. We talked about that. And a few policies and procedures are bed, bed and room assignment policy. So they're going to want to know what room you assign this person. You have to have that on the resident agreement. So they may be in bedroom A, um, bed number one. It has to be on their policy. It has to be on their contract. Um, a change in a resident accommodation procedure. Now, what that is when you actually have a resident and they're living there, you have to say, hey, I have to give you at least 30-day notice before I move you, or I have to give you 5-day notice, or I don't have to give you any notice. I can move you anytime I want to another room. That has to be spelled out in the policies and procedures and in the contract you have with them, because if you want to relocate a client to a new room and you don't have any policy and procedure, that client can say, no, I'm not moving anywhere. And you can say, look, Miss Johnson, I told you, like, I gave you it's in the policy procedures. I gave you 5-day notice and you're not really working out with your roommate. So I'm going to move you to a new room with a new roommate. You had your 5-day notice. I'm sorry, but has to happen. This is all things that's going to cover your butt when you own an assisted living facility. And trust me, I have to use it many of times. You have some roommates that one lady stays up all hours of the night and she wants to watch TV, and the other lady's going mad because she hates the TV on at night. So, and you have to transfer rooms. You have to have a copy of resident discharge policy. We talked about that earlier, where your residents actually have to have, you have to keep their files for 5 years. If the client passes away, you have to have how they passed away, what hospital or whatever. And you have to, if they just move to have to go to a nursing home, you have to have all that in their policy. It's pretty much the closing documents for their file. You have to keep it on style. You have to keep it on file for 5 years. And you have to have resident request to terminate the agreement. So it's just like a lease. So mine was 30 days. Like, hey, if you want to move out of my facility, you have to give me 30-day notice. If you don't give me 30-day notice, you're gonna owe, for the duration of the lease. So, you have to have that, because some clients will say, oh, well, you moved me to a new room and I don't like that, I'm leaving. And they'll up and pack and they'll have their family members want to take them away. And you're like, well, you can move, but you still have to owe this next month's rent or however many months you have left on your lease. So you just have to just cover yourself with these different policies, and you have to have a policy and procedure prohibiting abuse, neglect, and financial exploitation of the residents. So you have to have something stating that you're not going to abuse the residents. You can't take money from the residents. This is for your clients and yourself. You have to have those policies in place to submit to the state, and they have to approve them. And usually, it's not hard. It's not hard to do. I'll have a copy attached of these forms with this presentation, so you can review mine. You actually have to have an emergency disaster plan, and which means if there's a fire, where are these clients going to go if you have a fire, or if you have a snowstorm, a really bad snowstorm? How are you going to keep these residents fed and healthy during a snowstorm? Where's your backup water? Where's your backup food? You have to have all that stuff in your facility. They're not just going to let you wing it, because they can't afford to, and you can't afford to. So you have to have documentation stating how you're going to deal with this. If you have a bed bug outbreak, it just has to be, everything has to be documented in this industry. I mean, I can't state that enough. Everything should be documented. Even if the client has a cold, You document down, oh, this client had a cold today. She wasn't feeling well. You'd be surprised that I walked in some facilities, or I've had employees that I go behind them and I look at the client's log. I'm like, you haven't documented anything in the last 2 days for this client. Like, I want to know as an owner walking into in this facility if she had a good day. Oh, Miss Johnson had a good day. The end. I want you to write something there, because if you get them in the habit of not documenting on a daily basis in the resident logs, then they're going to just not document at all, even if something important happened. And then that client may have gotten sick 2 days ago. You didn't know, and they didn't say the client got sick and how they got, and then it could progress into something worse. Next thing you know, you lost a client just because the, the the person's not documenting. And then the delegating nurse has to come in and look at these documentations and change the plan of care, because the delegating nurse comes in every 45 days and writes a new plan of correction for the client. So it's not just when the person actually moves in your facility. So the person moves in your facility, the delegating nurse does it's called an initial assessment for a reason. That's just the initial assessment. But every 45 days after that, the delegating nurse then has to come in and review all these notes and files and medications and determine if this person needs any changes. So this person may need to have a change in medication, and she may consult with the doctor, say, hey, we have a client at XYZ Assisted Living, and I think that she needs to be on a new Alzheimer's medication or whatever. So documentation is always important from your staff or you to your delegating nurse to the state. You have to have documentation in place. And I think that's it for this one. And the smoking policy, we talked about the smoking policy as well. So moving on from the actual application, and I hope you all got that. You can listen to it again or read over it. Um, I actually want to talk about advertising your assisted living facility, because none of this means anything if you actually can't get any clients to move into your assisted living facility. So the number one and most important area of advertising your assisted living facility is develop relationships with social workers in your area. Social workers are your lifeline. They're the ones that are going to give you your clients. Social workers usually work in hospitals and nursing homes. And how that works, say if you have a grandmother that slips and falls in home, she goes to a hospital. She's in the hospital for a few days, and then they send her to a nursing and rehab facility. She goes to a nursing and rehab facility. She has to rehab her hip to see if she's okay. Now, the actual staff, they're going to tell the social workers, like, hey, she's better, but we don't recommend her going back home. The social workers are the one that has to facilitate to move the actual client into an assisted living facility or have a home care agency. So the social worker is going to call the family member and say, hey, your mother's ready to be discharged in a few weeks, but we don't think she's able to go home. I have a few assisted living facilities that I work with that I've sent clients to before that you might want to take a look at. Um, you know, and they'll facilitate with the family into having them move into an assisted living facility. So another thing I would do that I've found that worked, because when you have these, especially smaller facilities, even larger ones, you have to like build a sense of community. So what I would do is I would have like a community open house, like a cookout. I would like have a block party, and I would invite all the people that lived in the neighborhood to the block party. I would invite the social workers in nearby hospitals. I would invite just everyone I could. I would go to the community association, and I would like go and I would give out flyers and I would talk. I would present at the community association. I'll say, hey, I'm opening up this great resource for the neighborhood where the seniors don't have to move. Um, you can move if you have anyone that think about doing assisted living, I mean, living in assisted living facility, they can now still stay in the neighborhood, and you'll be surprised how many clients you get just from, putting roots in the neighborhood. Also, you want to develop a good relationship with the neighborhood so they won't complain. Because you'll be surprised that you have people that don't like change in the neighborhood. They just want a standard home. So, the quicker you get in good with the neighborhood, the better, and the more business you'll get. Um, I would pass out, door-to-door letters on each facility, each house in my neighborhood. Say, hey, I'm new to the neighborhood. You're welcome to call me and come take a look at the place. We should be licensed soon. I'm very excited, and I would, you know, just keep them as engaged as possible. Um, it's very important now, especially in the age of the internet, to actually have a strong online presence. You should definitely have a website or be on a site that actually promotes your company online. I actually own a company that 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 promotes senior care businesses online because when I was actually in the industry, we had really nothing like it. Most clients will use, most of us use referral agencies. And what referral agencies will do is they would actually call you and say, hey, do you have a bed available? I have a 80-year-old man. He pays $3,500 a month. Can you take him? And then you would go through the whole process of going to visit the person and sending it. The person would agree to move in, and you have your delegating nurse take care of the person, and then the person moves in, and then that referral agency would charge you 1 month's rent. So you have to cut that person from the referral agency a $3,500 check just for that one client that moved in your facility. And you don't know how long that person's going to actually live in your facility. So, you know, you don't know if they're going to be there 1 month, 2 months. You just never know. What you're dealing with an elderly population. They're very frail, so they may get sick and have to go back into nursing rehab. But you've already paid 1 month's rent to a referral agency. So I just came up with a company, ssmaps.com, that actually you list your assisted living facility on, and you don't pay referral fees. But that's at another time when you get licensed. But those are different, ways to advertise your assisted living facility. Those are ways that I have done over the last 11 years that has worked really well for me to the point where, I have a waiting list. Um, there's really good resources out there. Now, let's talk a little bit about your ongoing facility budget, which your month-to-month expenses will be in your assisted living facility. Um, so I left blank the mortgage or rent. Staff, I would spend around $7,200 per month in staff, averaging about $10 an hour. That's not including a delegating nurse and a few other smaller fees, but that's just for your ongoing staff. If you wanted to hire a live-in staff member, that's different. A live-in staff member is where the actual staff member actually lives in the facility. So from my facilities, I had a few of them. I had attic level where you really couldn't put a client all the way in the attic level, but it was perfect for a live-in. They would stay there and either work during the day and sleep at night, or sleep during the night and work during the day. So it worked out because you pay them a lot less than you pay an hourly staff because you deduct their room and board and food. You come up with an amount. You say, hey, I'll give you, $1,300 a month if you live here. And 9 times out of 10, that person is, you know, if they're looking to do a live-in, it's going to be perfect for them because A, they have a place to stay, and the money they get from you is per spending money. They have all the living expenses covered. So, and if you have any other questions about live-ins, I have live-in agreements that I can share. Just email me. Uh, Food, I would say, is around 1,200 a month. There are some food programs, and I didn't include that, but it varies from state to state. If you have some clients that may be a little lower income, or their family have to supplement their income, is ways you can apply for different food programs where you can have food covered, their food covered. So that'll help out a lot. And if also with that, if you need to contact me, you can. And gas and electric, $420. Phone bill 90, cable, internet 65. So, roughly you're talking about $8,900. $89.75. And let's say your mortgage or rent is $2,500. So all your expenses monthly is $11,475. So let's say if you have eight-bed facility, an eight-bed facility, that's about standard. So, and you're charging $3,000 a month. You're even $700 under what the average is. So you're charging $3,000 times $3,000 times eight clients. That's $24,000. Um, and you subtract all your expenses, which was 11,400. You're roughly bringing home $12,600 a month, and you're cheap compared to most facilities. So, it's a very lucrative business. Give or take, you can, even if you're a lot cheaper than other people, you can still bring in well over $10,000 a month per facility. Or if you want, and if you're gonna make it really nice, you can get $4 or $5,000 a month per person and just, run that number up. So it's just up to you, but you can definitely make a good living. Or you can be a little more affordable and make $7,000, $8,000 a month. It's up to you and what you want to do for pricing. Now I just want to go over like a few activities. So it's good to always have activities for your seniors. Very important, actually. And you actually want to have an activity calendar posted in your facility. Some states make it mandatory. I know Maryland is mandatory that you have an activity calendar posted. So some of the activities that my clients would like would be a game night. So we would have a game night. We would make it, bingo night or just poker night or, you know, any kind of game that would be interactive for the clients. We had paint and play where we would have arts and crafts, and they would come in and some clients would paint, some clients would color, depending on their cognitive levels. I had an extra person that came in to do exercise activities where they bring these little weights in and like illustrated in a picture, and the clients would exercise, and they would really like that. We would play music and exercise. We had uh, we had dance parties, which would be really good. We had we had movie night. We have popcorn and have a movie, and every client would have to get in one area, and we'd have movie night. That was a hit, and we also celebrated every holiday. And it's important. It's just this industry is just not all about making money. You actually should want to actually help people and make their lives as they're at end of life, so you should try to make the rest of their lives as comfortable and as happy as you can, and make money doing it. So it's a very rewarding industry if you do it right. You have happy clients, and you'll have happy bank account. So thank you very much for purchasing this course. And if you have any questions, you can have my email, and you can email me any questions you have. I have attached some forms that we talked about there to review, the resident agreement, employment application, and some other forms that I've attached. Any other questions you have, you can contact me. I also do consulting where I can do all this for you and do the application, help you find a facility, outfit the facility from start to finish. I do have a consulting service, so if you're interested in a consulting service where, I pretty much take all this the bull by the horn and do all this for you, you can always reach out to me and for pricing on the consulting services. And I look forward to hearing from you and feedback. Thank you.